Okay, this is the spindle for a 2005 PT Cruiser. They're all the same, 01 to 2010. The front bearings were shot, and this is the finished product with a new hub and new bearing pressed inside. I did not have to go and have this done at an outside source, and I do not have a hydraulic press with which to do this. So how did I do it? Well, I'm going to show you. But the first thing I'm going to tell you is getting the old bearing and hub out is not a picnic. Basically, I started out by clamping the hub into this vise here, but having it basically like straight up like that. And I just beat and beat and beat on it with this 3-pound little hammer, okay? And I was making progress, and the one bearing came out doing just that. Basically, the hub and the bearing came out together. The second one was giving me a little more trouble. And then I remembered I have this electric jackhammer that I bought about a year ago to actually remove a bollard out of some concrete. And as soon as I put that giant chisel up against the bearing, I mean, it popped out in like a minute. No, I mean, not even a minute, like 15 seconds. So that would have saved me a lot of trouble had I done that. Now, of course, not everybody has one of those. But if you have a 3-pound hammer, you should be able to get it out. Now, to get the inner part of the bearing off the old hub, it's doable, but it's just not worth it because you can buy brand new hubs on Amazon right now, and they're genuine Dorman too. They're not just some weird brand. Brand new hubs, 20 bucks a piece. A pair of bearings ran me about 23, 24. And so with tax, $70. New hubs, new bearings. So let's get to how did I go about pressing it in? Because it's not easy, but it's also not that hard. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is make sure you've got it in relatively straight, because they will go a little crooked if you don't. Okay. And I just use a little rubber mallet and gently kind of tap it in just to get it started. Okay. I don't know about you, but that looks not quite straight, but close. Okay. That's straight enough. Now, this is the easy part. I'm just going to go ahead and turn it, put it in the vise, crank it down. So just because of the shape of these spindles relative to my vise, I'm using like a little, a toe, not the toe receiver, but the hitch. I'm using that as like a spacer because I want to keep the spindle nice and straight relative to the jaws of the vise. But it's in there pretty good. So now I'm just going to crank it on down. Okay, it's almost all the way in. And there we go. Now I've got the retaining clip, or whatever you want to call that piece, holding the bearing in, and I think it pressed it in just a smidgen further as well. In case you're wondering, yes, this is the correct procedure. You must put the bearing in the spindle first, and then the hub and the bearing, and not the other way around. And this is why, at least on these cars, you cannot buy a hub and bearing assembly ready to insert in the into the spindle. It doesn't exist, so it has to be done in this order. Okay, so this is my makeshift bearing press. Basically, I've got a 3/4 inch, 7-inch long bolt here running through. This is what's called a floor flange. This is actually a piping piece. This is an old bearing I'm using as a spacer. And then I've got the nut here, and I've got washers that perfectly fit in there. Now, did they perfectly fit when I got them? No, they did not. They were just a little too big. So what I did is I put them on a bolt, stuck them in my drill, and going in the opposite direction of that bench grinder, I kind of used it as almost a lathe and shaved down the outer diameter of the washer until it fit in there absolutely perfectly and snugly. These are 3/4 inch fender washers. Now, why do I have them on this bolt? Well, I'm going to show you. Because they are normally a little bit too large, I'll show you, to fit inside this part of the hub. See, they're kind of like that, right? Well, I didn't want to like jam it in there with unbelievable force and then never be able to get it out, because it's just that rough size, right? That it might have pressed it in or bent. I knew that was a bad idea, so I had to shave it down. So what I did was I fashioned this crude implement using a smaller bolt and put it in my drill in reverse direction, and then just like this with my bench grinder growing, this was going like this, the bench grinder was spinning like this, and it made like a lathe, and I just kept pushing until it fit in, which it does, like that. Fits in there pretty good, actually. So it's a little sticky, but not so sticky that I'm worried that it'll get stuck in there. Now, how did I get this thing lined up? Because remember, the hole in this washer is that big, right? So obviously it's going to be hard to get this centered just right to get a good spin to shave it down. Okay, so what I did was I sandwiched the big washers between these two washers, and look, in here I put those washers to serve as that, to keep it nice and centered. Now, of course, these washers also did not fit inside the hole. So before I did that, I clamped them to the bolt, and I had to shave them down a little bit. Now you might be asking, well, how long did this take? It actually only took just a couple of minutes. And now it is going in. And it's actually going in fairly easily. Now, the bearing inside is split in half. So you want to take some degree of care to make sure that the hub doesn't push out the bearing. I will show you what I mean. So right there, the hub is just about to cross that line. Here's the bearing. See how it's split? So it's just about to cross that halfway point. You do not want the hub coming in this direction, pushing on this and separating it from the bearing. That is easy to do if you're not careful. So you want to make sure that you're bracing this. So now that I've got the hub part halfway in, I'm switched up the floor flange and the old bearing in favor of a 1.5 inch socket, because its diameter is very perfect for this, and we want to press against that in particular to keep it in. Now, the reason I didn't do that from the beginning is because the bolt wouldn't have been long enough, because this is actually thicker than the bearing. Hope that makes sense. And that's it. We're done. It's got a nice spin to it. Feels good and firm. And now it just needs to be installed in the car.